And then only the essential staff members required to constitute this ceremony will be present at this event. Thank you for understanding that we had to limit the number of guests that you could invite. Ons sê vir u baie dankie vir u begrip in hierdie verband ook. And then also rest assured that this hall is thoroughly cleaned before and after each ceremony. The wearing of a mask is of course mandatory for both gradients and guests for the full duration of the ceremony, including when gradients cross the stage. Please do maintain a safe distance of at least 1.5 meters from others at all times. And then also no food may be brought into or consumed in this hall. Only water is permitted inside the venue. And now to the ceremony itself. Dames en here, oor die seremonie die volgende net. We will not be singing the national anthem as is our custom, but instead listen to an instrumental rendition of it directly after the procession has entered the hall. The presiding officer at this ceremony is our Chancellor, Justice Edmund Cameron. When we get to the awarding of degrees, gradients will be called up to cross the stage, but in order to comply with COVID-19 regulations, there will be no handshaking by the presiding officer or hooting by the registrar. Instead, please walk up to the presiding officer, exchange nods, and then turn around for your 15 seconds of fame and photos and acknowledgement by the audience. Dis natuurlik regtig u geleentheid ook en ook u 15 secondes van glorie, so u verdien dit ook. Members of the audience are also welcome to take photos, but please do switch off the sound and the flash on your cell phones or cameras. In fact, please do keep your cell phone on silent for the duration of the ceremony. And then at the conclusion of the ceremony, once the procession is left, we respectfully request that you exit the hall and the building swiftly so the cleaning and preparation for the next ceremony may commence as soon as possible. And then kindly also ensure that you take along any waste items such as water bottles or tissues, etc. This service. Or of course you can exit the building and then capture those special moments outside with the beautiful Victoria Street as backdrop. The photographers also have set up in front of the building to take some of those photos as well. And that's also where you will find the Marty Shop mobile unit for purchasing Stellenbosch University branded items to remind you of the successful academic journey we are celebrating today. Baie dankie dames en here vir die geduld met die talle aanwysings. Dis egter natuurlik in ons almal se belang ook. Ladies and gentlemen, in this time of COVID-19 we have hybrid graduation ceremonies. This is one of 11 small physical ceremonies for our doctoral gradients, and all other degrees are being conferred during online faculty-specific ceremonies that have been pre-recorded and scheduled for release on YouTube. You're welcome, of course, to check the university's homepage for information about those events. Some good news, this graduation ceremony can be followed via live streaming from anywhere in the world. In case you were not aware of this, you're welcome to share the following web address with family and friends, and that is the university's web address, sun.ac.za/streaming. Laat weet gerus daai familie in Australië dat hulle kan kyk. Dis die universiteit se adres, sun.ac.za/streaming. Unlikely it seems at this stage, but please note that load shedding may interrupt internet connectivity and therefore also live streaming, but you will still be able to access a recording of the event as of tomorrow, and that will also be on YouTube. Load shedding will however not in this ceremony itself. We do have a generator on standby. So if we have a power outage, please remain seated while we switch over to emergency power. You're welcome, of course, to share your graduation experiences. I know that all our doctoral gradients are very active on social media, so you're welcome to share your experiences, and that is, or the hashtag that we use is SUGrad. Just remember to put your phone on silent, please. Dames en here, ons is bykans gereed om met die plegtigheid te begin en ons gaan vir u vra om op te staan vir die akademiese prosessie en dat u sal bly staan tot nadat ons na die nasionale lied geluister het. Ladies and gentlemen, please do rise for the academic procession and remain standing until after we have listened to the national anthem. Thank you very much. Baie dankie en kos kakoe.
Good afternoon. We start with an instrumental rendition of our national anthem. Ons begin met 'n instrumentale weergawe van ons volkslied en ons sing die saam wanneer die omstandighede van ons we will not sing along. We will just observe the national nature of this occasion to the instrumental version. This congregation of the university is properly constituted. Volgens die magte wat mij toevertrouwen is in die statuut van de universiteit, verklaar dat die congregatie behoorlijk geconstitueerd is. Before we go any further, I want to ask us all to take just a minute or less to mark the terrible 20 months that we've been through Many hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs. We've lost approximately 270,000 people, if the statistics are properly related, about 3 times the official tally to COVID. And it's been a time of grief and loss and hardness for many people. So let us begin our ceremony with a reflective moment of just a minute or so. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dis vir my 'n baie groot gehoor om u vanmiddag almal hier te verwelkom. My naam is Conferring. Ek is die kanselier. Dis my tweede volle jaar as kanselier. I'm very happy to be welcoming you all. I have the honor to be Chancellor of this university. It's a titular position, purely ceremonial, which means that the main power I have is to constitute the congregation and to dismiss it later and to confer your degrees. The hard work at the university is done by the person sitting to my right, Professor Volmink, who's the rector and vice-chancellor, and on his right is the person who does the really part, the registrateur, Dr. Renal Tief, and where's Professor Koopman? He is here. Professor Koopman is the vice-rector. En aan sy linkerkant is Professor Matiba, ons dekaan, en daar is Professor Nicolai. Trek nie weg nie. Die dekaan van die regsfakulteit, is net agter my. En dan het ek vir die uitgelos. Ja, ek moet nou vinnig soek. Ek is eers Professor Regina. Sal nie my vergeet, dat ek nie amper uitgelos het. En dan ons 5 baie gedistingeerde mense die verhoog. They are honoring our ceremony, they're honoring your occasion, and you will meet them in detail later. I have particular personal links with 2 of them. A very revered colleague, who was my colleague in the Supreme Court of Appeal when I was there, and he came to act in the Constitutional Court for a year when I was the Peace Judge Brandt, and then Dr. Nicky Newton King, who you'll hear more about later, is a personal friend as well, and a alumnus of the law school like me. But we also have 2 wonderful other degrees, there's honorary degrees to be conferred. Professor John Volmink, B-Star, another deeply personal connection with great joy, and Liz LaRue, who's also, you're going to hear about her distinction and her courage in the campaigns that she has waged. And then the last person I want to introduce is Professor Chris Reddy. He's going to receive a Chancellor's Award. But having said all of that, I now, by virtue of the powers vested in me, pronounce that you, the honorary doctor, real doctors of this university, you have attained it through the sweat of your brow, eers vanmiddag die belangrikste gaste. En daarmee kan ons dan voortgaan met die verwelkoming. En ek vanoggend hierdie stap uitgelos, toe my sê iemand by Dr. LaRue's kantoor daar van beskuldig dat hulle het uitgelos het. Ons het nou verwelkom deur Professor Awani Klani. Sal jy dit as 'n verskil, hierdie keer het ek nie vergeet.
Siyanamkela molweni manene namanenekazi. Siyanamkela kumsitho wothusuzidanga kule veki. Siyathemba ukuba olu suku luza kuba neenkumbulo ezinhle kwabo baza kube bethweswa izidanga kwiintsapho zabo kunye nezihlobo ngokubanzi. Manene namanenekazi, sizama ngako konke esinako ukubiza amagama abantu ngendlela efanelekileyo. Ndiqinisekile uDean nesekela lakhe bebezama ngako konke okusemandleni ukuziqhelanisa noku, kodwa okuyinyani sinabo baza kube bethweswa izidanga abasebenzi kunye neendwendwe ezivela kwindawo ngendawo ezahlukeneyo ezinelwimi ezahlukeneyo nezo zivela ngaphaya kwemida yaseMzantsi Afrika. Yiyo loo nto sicela ukuba nibe nenyameko kuba singakufumanisa kungumcelimngeni ukubiza amanye amagama kunye neefani. Enkosi.
We make you the honored guests of this ceremony because you have attained the highest qualification that this university can confer afterward, which is a contribution to human knowledge and insight through your own research, analysis, and conceptualization of a difficult problem. And we decided last year, when COVID hit us, to continue with heavily scaled down graduation ceremonies. So they are being simulcast on the web. And when you come over here later after you've conferred our honorary degree, remember this moment is yours. You're going to be recording it. If you've got loved ones at home, look up at the webcast up there and make it your moment. I managed to persuade some of the people this morning to do a little dance. Not compulsory. If any of you want to do a little dance, to seize the moment, you've worked for it. And we're particularly proud of the fact that through rigorous institutional planning, through care, through the leadership of Professor de Villiers and his team, we have managed to proceed as an academic institution, but more than that. Ons ken vanjaar meer doktersgrade as per jaar. It's about 143 this year. And more master's degrees, amper 700 eerstesgrade. En die ander goeie nuus verstaan ons is dat ons roem ons nie op hoe ons by ander instellings en tertiaire inrigtings bygaan nie, but we are the upper assembly systems, soos op pad boontoe, ons is tweede in Suid-Afrika, op die ranglijste wat die meeste vroue in Muslim. And we're very proud that we've managed to keep going in the difficult circumstances that you've been through, and we are particularly proud that you managed to finish your theses, managed to submit your articles and publications, and be here today. Another source of exceptional pride is embodied in our law faculty dean, Professor Nicholas Smith, who's sitting on my left. It's the 100th anniversary of the law school, and we're very proud for that reason to have two doctors from the law school this afternoon. And I think they're also genuine doctors, nie van die rechtsfaculteit. Ja, ek wil sommer sien die leid soos een rechtspersoon. I'm not going to say why. And we're very pleased. There was a beautiful ceremony this morning, well, an informal occasion with ceremonial overtones in the open on the forecourt for the old Wilfred. I got access to the many years ago. I won't tell you, one of my lecturers who studied even more years ago was Professor Brandt, who later became my colleague in the various courts I mentioned. But the occasion this morning accentuated to me what we've lost in not having this hall jam-packed. But it also accentuated to me how wonderful it is that we are able to continue. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that brought you here. We will now go over to the presentation of the honorary degrees. Na elke verlening van die leergraad, Frans die een van die 4 persone in volgorde te weergeven. And now I ask that the various officials, starting with the rector, present our candidates.
Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you Professor John David Volmink with a request that you confer on him the degree Doctor of Education honoris causa. The decision by Council and Senate to award him this degree was taken on the grounds of the following considerations. Through his exceptional leadership skills, Professor John David Volmink has made an outstanding contribution to education in South Africa. The impact of his contribution is felt at all levels of the South African education industry, from schooling through to higher education, and in the broader South African society. Professor Volmink, the chairperson of Umalusi, the Council for Quality Assurance in General and Further Education and Training, started his career as a high school teacher and later held various teaching and management positions at local and international universities. In addition to his proven leadership in higher education, Professor Volmink has made significant contributions to education, in particular to curriculum reform and the quality assurance of schooling in post-apartheid South Africa. Every post-apartheid Minister of Education has requested him to play a leading role in the transformation of education in South Africa. Professor Volmink has also demonstrated a deep commitment to development in Africa through chairing and establishing numerous non-profit organizations. The largest of these is the education organization MIET Africa, that operates in the Southern African Development Community region. This organization works with vulnerable and marginalized youth, and through its programs aims at developing the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes of these youths to enable them to lead productive lives and become active and responsible citizens. Professor Volmink has also made a remarkable contribution to the advancement of mathematics education in South Africa. In 1997, he was seconded to the Open Society Foundation for South Africa, where he served as Director of Education Programs, Mathematics, Science and Technology Initiative. And through his initiatives, several mathematics, science and technology projects were established and funded, including the Malati project, which contributed greatly to the advancement of mathematics education research at Stellenbosch University. And his executive leadership in the early 1990s, followed by his role as chairperson of the Center for the Advancement of Science and Mathematics Education, has seen the organization celebrating more than 30 years of supporting the development of mathematics education in schools in KwaZulu-Natal. What makes Professor Volmink's contribution to South African and global society truly remarkable is his ability to straddle three separate yet overlapping domains, namely higher education, formal school education, and community-based education. And he has shown outstanding leadership and tireless commitment in contributing to all three domains. Mr. Chancellor, I hereby request that you confer the degree Doctor of Education honoris causa on Professor John David Volmink for his visionary and innovative leadership in steering curriculum reform in the South African education sector, for his commitment to excellence and the core intellectual dimensions of education, namely knowledge creation, teaching, and learning, and for his ongoing commitment to improving the quality of and access to education in Africa.
In personal joy, I confer the degree of Doctor of Education on Professor John David Volmink.
Chancellor Cameron, Vice-Chancellor de Villiers, Dean Madiba, distinguished guests, it's a profound honor and a deeply meaningful experience for me to be here today and to receive this honorary doctorate from this university. I am proud that as of today I can be counted among the alumni of this great institution and be linked with the Faculty of Education whose thought leadership I greatly respect. The intellectual contribution of the members of this faculty is held in the highest regard in this country and across the world. When I finally returned to South Africa in 1990, after several years in the US, I came into a situation where the conventional signposts have been washed away, and as a country, we were traveling on uncharted waters. We were celebrating what I call the chaos and the turbulence of a new beginning. It was scary and yet exciting to be part of that wonderful and dynamic period of our history. It was hard to decide, though, how best I could make a contribution to the transformation and renewal project. I made a purposeful decision to locate myself on the boundary of the university so that I could best serve the academic project and at the same time advance the interests and aspirations of the community. I've worked in this position since then, working in partnership with the communities so that they can help advance the academic project of the university while at the same time support the university to serve the community through collaborative pursuit. I learned many lessons while working on the boundary. I came to see firsthand, through many what I call muddy shoes visits to all parts of the country, what the impact of poverty is on the people who have been denied the choice of being participants in the choices that affect their lives. I've come to understand that poverty should be seen as the inability to participate in society with dignity. I've also come to understand the importance of education as a means of transformation, and I believe now that the future, our future, will be determined by the extent to which we attend to the professional preparation and retention of those entrusted with the education of all our children. Ultimately, education has to do with nation building and about building a just society. And so I immersed myself from the beginning in the improvement of education. I was inspired in those early days by none other than our Chancellor, Justice Edward Cameron, who in the early 90s worked alongside me and others in an education NGO in Mamelodi. I will never forget those days. It was also particularly pleasing to be asked by all the ministers of education in the democratic era to play a significant role in the transformation of education. So, in closing, I want to say our work is not done. We have to continue to ask the question, what kind of people do we want to see coming out of our school system as the citizens of a transformed and admirable society? And to this end, we have recently launched the Ubuntu Leaders Program in all schools in South Africa. This concept of Ubuntu is central in helping us to understand that we should live together in a way that expresses our common unity and humanity. The Portuguese ambassador, Manuel Carvalho, is here today, and I would like to acknowledge his support to take this message of hope to the world. We are now working in 190 different countries with the Ubuntu project. So, I want to say that the young people, to me, is the people that inspire me. The digital revolution has created an amazing opportunity for the current generation to interact and have dialogue on a global scale with each other. And I believe that young people, young leaders, sharing a commitment to an Ubuntu ethic of care and bridge building and servant leadership will make a huge impact, working together to make this a better world for all of us. Thank you, Chancellor.
Professor Volmink, we thank you for those beautiful words and insights. Thank you.
Meneer die kanselier, dit is nou my eer om LaRue aan u voor te stel met die versoek dat u aan haar die graad dokter in die opvoedkunde honoris causa toeken. Die besluit deur die Raad en die Senaat om hierdie graad aan haar toe te ken is op grond van die volgende oorwegings geneem. LaRue, die eerste vrou om as hoofuitvoerende beampte van die Kunste Kaap Theater in Kaapstad aangestel te word, is 'n bekende kampvegter vir gemeenskappe sonder toegang tot regte en geleenthede. She started her career as a music teacher on the Cape Flats before joining the Arts Cape Theatre in 2001 as Director of Audience Development and Education. She went on to change the face of Artscape's audiences, artists and programming, and has been steadfast in empowering and supporting disadvantaged groups to find fulfilling careers in the arts. Marlene introduced outreach projects that range from theatre appreciation workshops to taking complete productions, along with workshops and educational theatre to rural areas and communities where arts and cultural opportunities are limited. These include the Women's Festival, the Youth Jazz Festival, the Youth Classical Music Festival, and the High School Drama Festival. Her outreach programs take theatre to communities such as Ceres, Grabouw, and Wellington, and involves the best opera singers, dancers, and musicians in a 90-minute production. Sy het ook bygedra tot die vestiging van die Wellingtonse Jeugorkes in 2012, 'n gesamentlike poging deur die Kunste Kaap en die Breitenberg Sentrum om aan die jeug toegang tot 'n platform vir optrede te gee. Die orkes tree by plaaslike feeste op en het al internasionaal in die Verenigde Koninkryk opgetree. Marlene werk ook saam met die Stichting vir Bemagtiging deur Afrikaans, wat leesprogramme aanbied vir ma's, geletterdheidsprogramme vir plaaswerkers en mentorskappe om jong mense uit arm agtergronde toe te rus vir universiteitsstudie. Sy is ook 'n medestigter van the Women's Achievement Network for Disability, die vroue prestasie netwerk vir gestremdheid. Malien word plaaslik en internasionaal erken vir haar gebruik van die kunste om sosiale kohesie te bou en vir haar reuse bydraes tot die bevordering van kunstenaars met gestremdhede. Malien LaRue is the recipient of, amongst others, a French Knighthood Merit Award, the Kodaba Award from the National Department of Arts and Culture for making theatre accessible to all, and the Commonwealth Point of Light Award. Mr. Chancellor, I hereby request that you confer the degree Doctor of Education, honoris causa, on Malien LaRue for a commitment to the development of the performing arts, for a dedication to ensure access to the performing arts for young people from marginalized communities, for using the arts to educate, to empower, to create community, and as a tool of expression for the oppressed, the vulnerable, the wronged, and the marginalized.
Conferred the degree of Doctor of Education on Malien LaRue, honoris causa.
Thank you so much, and I will be 3 minutes. So if the registrar can just tell me. I first want to start. My heart is very full tonight. But I first want to say that it's also the 100th year of the Afrikaans poet P.A. Philander. And P.A. Philander, he wrote about how the person of color has built our country, and we were always invisible. And I want to start, and I quote, "Jy gespikkel teen die hellings en tussen die bome, of in die skugtere groepies op brak kolle, saamgehurk staan daar, ook die huisies van duisende plaaswerkers. Tussen die hulle by wie jy later sal koffie drink, of op die koelstoep onder die eike sit nie, tussen die hulle wat daar sal wees, om jy op breinhand te reik en jou welkom te heet nie." A special word of appreciation, I want to say, particular to the Chancellor, Judge Edwin Cameron. Thank you for the work that you in particular have done for the LGBTQ plus community. It's about humanity. Thank you for what you stand for making the visible more visible and the invisible visible. To Professor Wim de Villiers and to Professor Nico Koopman, it is not an easy task to build a nation that comes from our background, a nation that is so divided because of apartheid, and a university that needs to look at leadership with ethical, but leadership to understand their communities. So thank you, and I'm honored that I could stand here today. Know that we are building together, and we're walking the cobbles, which is not straight sometimes, towards a new South Africa. Our journey have just begun. So be aware that we are there as alumni to uphold you with these steps. It is a special honor for me indeed. I accept this on behalf of many disadvantaged women, persons with disability, and also people who have no voice in life. I started my life what can be seen as a cycle. We are born into poverty and would ultimately die in poverty. Gelukkig het ek groot geword in Wellington, 'n liefdesvolle familie en gemeenskap. Nooit in my wildste drome het ek as 'n dogter van Christine Titi, wat oorlede was, en was so opgewonde die dag toe professor Wim de Villiers my geskakel het op 24 September verlede jaar om vir my te sê, I'm going to get this degree. I put the phone down. I thought it was a joke because it's a holiday. Who phone you on Heritage Day? I put the phone down. I said to Wim, no, it's not Wim. I put it down. And I then phoned Professor Koopman. I said, Professor, I just got this strange call, man. Just confirm. Maybe it's one of my comrades that wants to come for a drink. He said, it's true. And then, subsequently, my mother passed on with COVID, Titi, on the 25th of December in my arms. And tonight, I'm dedicating this to my mother and to my late son, Adam. My ouma en my oupa Frank Abrams en Christina Abrams, nooit het ek gedink dat ek hier sal staan vanaand nie. Hulle het regtig waar die vernedering van apartheid het hulle gevoel. Hoe bevoorreg is ek nie dat ek my opvoeding in my moedertaal in Afrikaans kon ontvang het nie. Hoe groot is my dankbaarheid? Want dit is belangrik dat onderrig in grondflase wel in jou moedertaal ontvang moet word. So I am also an activist for indigenous languages, that you need to get your formal and your first education, and that is in your mother tongue. In order for you to graduate at university, you first start at your intermediate and that particular grondslagfase. That's most important. The most important time in our lives is now. Yes, especially now in the midst of a pandemic. Today we still live in a marginalized world and the challenges of poverty in our countries is just growing greater. The question begs, where do we stand now, Chancellor? Where do we stand now? Hoop en woorde soos Ubuntu kan net op hol woorde bly as ons beleid nie spreek tot 'n dogtertjie van Hoston of Wellington Kayamandi of Saro nie. As dit nie 'n gestremde dogtertjie se wens kan bewaar het nie, is sulke woorde nie die moeite werd nie. Ubuntu can't just be a transformational word that is for PhD studies. It should be action, it should be practice. Die kunste oorbrug politieke grense, bring ons as mense by mekaar en bind ons gemeenskappe aan mekaar. Dit spreek die pluraliteit van die verlede, sowel as die uitdagings van die hede aan. Taal en kultuur ken nie kleur nie. Hoop gaan gepaard met daadwerklike aksie, waar ons doelbewuste besluite neem om nader aan mekaar te beweeg en die egos agter te laat. Economic wealth must become the economic health of our society. It is therefore important for the university to remain a university of relevance with ethical leadership and implementers of policy who hold the power to change the life of farm workers' child and the child with a disability on an economic level. Such change is indeed possible, as is evident in the example of Paul Sikotwa, who is one of the only black wine farmers in the Franschhoek region. Paul bought the farm Klein Goederust. He is here tonight. And
Paul, tonight, I'm also dedicating this to you. Through years of savings, not with BEE, and perseverance, thereby defeating the perception that, as the son of a farm laborer, this would become his destiny too. Of course, while Paul is regarded as a role model, his continued success and the destiny of his farm would be positively influenced through the availability of active support and not just words of encouragement. So for the university surrounded by farms, and I know you're doing a lot, let us not stop, because it is the right of that child, that farm child, to be part of this university. I want to end. Baie dankie. Thank you for my Artscape family, to my Artica Fee family, to the hospital, Tygerberg Hospital Children's Trust, to the Chrysalis Academy, to my Titi Mai, who is now my mother, and Uncle Neil, to my brothers Jack, Wilfred, Patrick, Richard, Ray, Edward, and my beloved and gifted daughter Amy Jord, and my late son Adam, who taught me so much about life. Also to my partner Eduardus van der Bort, who made me realize more sal die son weer skyn. Thank you for the role that you all have played in my continuous growing as a person. And I want to end off. South Africa is a diverse landscape in so many ways. Let's embrace each other with sincere care and real development for our young people, and work together at a foundation level to pursue economic empowerment and our outstanding of being us in a humane way. Ek glo almal het 'n plek onder die son in die nuwe Suid-Afrika. Ons moet nog net die gesamentlike hoe verstaan. At the end of life, what really matters is not what we bought, but what we built. Not what we got, but what we shared. Not our competence, but our character. And not our success, but our significance. Live a life that matters. Live a purposeful life and give of yourself. I thank you.
LaRue, thank you for those passionate and angry and forward-looking words. Thank you.
Meneer die kanselier, dit is my eer om Frederik Daniel Jacobus Brandt aan u voor te stel. Met die versoek dat u aan hom die graad dokter in die regsgeleerdheid honoris causa toeken. Die besluit deur die raad en die senaat om hierdie graad aan hom toe te ken, is op grond van die volgende oorwegings geneem. As voormalige regter van die hoogste hof van appel van Suid-Afrika, het Fritz Brandt nasionaal en internasionaal uitnemende bydraes tot die gebied van die reg gelewer. Brandt, wat in 2015 as regter van die hoogste hof van appel afgetree het, begin in 1973 sy loopbaan as 'n akademikus in die fakulteit regsgeleerdheid aan die Universiteit Stellenbosch. In 1992 word hy tot die Kaapse Balie toegelaat en hy praktiseer as advokaat vir 15 jaar, voordat hy in 1992 as regter aangestel word. His impact is especially evident from his highly influential judgments as Justice of the High Court and Supreme Court of Appeal, and his extensive involvement in legal scholarship. He has written about 200 reported judgments, some of which have become leading cases in various fields of law, and have been the subject of extensive academic commentary. Brandt has also been involved in adjudication elsewhere in Africa and has acted in the Court of Appeal of Lesotho and the Supreme Court of Namibia. He holds a permanent appointment on the bench of the Appeal Court of Botswana. In 2018, he was appointed to a position on the Supreme Court bench of Fiji for 3 years, and in 2019 was invited to join the Qatar International Commercial Court in Doha. Although former Justice Brandt moved from legal academia to practice early in his legal career, he maintained a strong interest in legal education and training, and he has had a lasting impact on generations of students, practitioners, and members of the judiciary. While he practiced at the bar, Brandt continued to lecture at the University of Stellenbosch on a part-time basis. However, his most significant contribution to legal education has been his involvement in seminars to High Court judges and magistrates in South Africa and in several other African countries, including Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Eritrea. Sedert 2014 beklee hy die posisie van ereprofessor in die departement privaatreg in die fakulteit regsgeleerdheid van ons universiteit. Daar waar ons steeds van sy mentorskap en navorsingsvermoëns gebruik maak. Hy is ook 'n trustee van die Regstrust van Stellenbosch se fakulteit regsgeleerdheid, wat die fakulteit se werksaamhede op verskeie fronte ondersteun. Meneer die kanselier, ek versoek hiermee dat u die graad dokter in die regte, honoris causa, toeken aan Fritz Brandt vir sy toewyding aan die ontwikkeling van Suid-Afrikaanse wetgewing, vir sy toewyding aan die versterking van die regbank in Afrika deur betrokkenheid by sy hoogste howe, vir sy toewyding aan die opleiding van 'n nuwe geslag regters en vir die deel van sy kundigheid deur sy plaaslike en internasionale vakkundige bydraes.
First woord ken ek die graad LLB, honoris causa, Frederik Daniel Jacobus.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, thank you for the exceptional honor bestowed upon me. What renders it even more exceptional is the feeling that I am amongst friends. The Vice-Chancellor's father, Professor de Villiers, was my lecturer. Then he became my mentor, my friend. I suppose he was also my colleague. But we never thought of him in that way. To me, he was always Professor de Villiers. Even when invited to call him by his first name, I thought his first name was Professor. The Chancellor, somewhat later in my career, as he said, became a colleague of mine. And we always agreed in our judgments, except when he was wrong. And although he will probably deny it, he's also my friend. Die Universiteit van Stellenbosch was van my baie jong dae af deel van my lewe, deel van my opvoeding. My ouma was 'n student hier aan die universiteit. En met die fisiekanselier, dit maak het dalk interesseer, en daai dae was Stellenbosch redelik Engels geweest. Hulle het meer Engels gepraat as Afrikaans. So my ouma was nie op harmonie nie, sy was op harmony. En die ouma van my het 5 kinders gehad. En sy het my oupa wat 'n boer in staat 8 was, oortuig om al 5 kinders hiernatoe te stuur. Maar my oupa was nie 'n man vir nuttelose opleiding soos regte en medisyne nie. Hulle moes almal landbou studeer. En my ma moes huishoudkunde doen. En die ouma van my het 21 kleinkinders gehad. En al 21 van hulle hou grade van die universiteit. My vrou en haar broers en susters is ook maar hier. En so ons kinders. So, Stellenbosch was deel van my lewe. Toe ek by die regsfakulteit hier aangesluit het ons 5 dosente gehad. Party van hulle was uitstekende dosente, party van hulle was uitstekende navorsers, party was albei, party was nie een nie. Maar wat hulle almal in gemeen gehad het, is dat hulle ons 'n liefde geleer het vir die reg. Die reg as wetenskap, die ars die boni equi, die reg, the art of what is good and fair. Dit is wat ons hier geleer het, en waarvoor ek die fakulteit nog steeds dan verskillig is. For those of you who might be interested in the South African legal system, will know that we have a mixed system influenced by both English law and Roman law or civil law. We fortunately, I must say, avoided the codification by becoming a British colony before Napoleon started his codification on the continent. We avoided codification. So by that we actually became, I suppose, the leading non-codified civil law country in the world. Now, the relevance of that is that we inherited the British system of precedent, where judges formulate the law, the principles of the law, in the highest courts. In a codified system, on the other hand, the development of law is more involved with the interpretation of the code, so that academic lawyers have a far greater influence on the development of the law than judges. But in the British system, academic lawyers do not have much of an influence. In fact, until recently, the tradition was not to refer to any living author in your judgments. But in South Africa, because of our mixed system, we are very much influenced by our academic colleagues. So, if I did make a contribution to the law, I owe a great debt to my colleagues, particularly at this faculty, for the influence they had on me. As to my role in judicial education, it started in about 1995, when Dalla Omar became the first Minister of Justice in the new government, in the new democratic government, and he asked Ian Farlam and myself to set up a facility for the education of our newly appointed colleagues. I suppose he did so not so much of our particular ability, but because he knew us as our former instructing attorney and our colleague at the bar. Fortunately for Ian and myself in those days, legal education, judicial education, was not something new. It was well known in the UK, the US, and most English-speaking countries. So we could learn from them. And through our international contact, we became involved internationally. I have a rather selfish satisfaction in my role in judicial education. It gave me an opportunity to make amends for what went wrong in the past. And I owe a great debt of gratitude to my new colleagues who allowed me so graciously to make those amends. And that gave me energy, and it still gives me energy. So like the white rabbit in Alice, I suppose I carry on till the end, and then I'll stop. Thank you, Mr. Chancellor.
Dr. Brandt, thank you for those very moving and delightful words. Thank you.
And Chancellor, may I say it's very delightful to see some handwritten notes still, not typed out. Mr. Chancellor, I have the honor to present to you Nikki Newton-King, with the request that you confer on her the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa. The decision by Council and Senate to award her this degree was taken on the grounds of the following considerations. Nikki Newton-King, the former Chief Executive Officer of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, JSE, is a trailblazer who has made an enduring contribution to the fields of law and commerce in South Africa. Newton-King, who started her career as a commercial lawyer, was the first woman to run the JSE in its 125-year history. In a 23-year career at the JSE, she served in various executive roles, and then as the Deputy CEO for 8 years prior to her appointment as the CEO. She drove significant milestones, not least the demutualization and listing of the JSE and the acquisition of the SA Futures Exchange and the Bond Exchange of SA. She led the JSE through the successful implementation of major technology projects, which transformed the organization's trading and clearing service offerings and championed the importance of business being a socially responsible participant on matters critical to the national agenda. These initiatives contributed significantly to the JSE's positioning as a leading multi-asset class exchange. When the JSE announced her retirement, they noted that Newton-King leaves the JSE, and I quote, stronger, more diverse, more technologically advanced, commercially savvy, and client-focused. She has also made contributions to the wider legal and financial regulation sectors as a member of the Financial Markets Advisory Board, the Presidential Remuneration Commission, the King Task Group into Insider Trading, and as non-executive director of Straight Pty Limited. She was closely involved with writing the country's insider trading legislation and concluded several high-profile insider trading cases in the late 1990s. Newton-King, who is also passionate about education, is no stranger to Stellenbosch University. An alumna of the Faculty of Law, she has been a regular presenter on the Frederick van Zyl-Slabbert short course in Leadership in Law, which is offered in collaboration with the Faculty of Law and the well-established Juridical Society. Newton-King was selected as one of the World Economic Forum's 100 Global Leaders for Tomorrow and is also a recipient of the South African Businesswoman of the Year Award. Mr. Chancellor, I hereby request that you confer the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa on Nikki Newton-King for her visionary leadership and contribution to the transformation and strengthening of the South African economy, for her dedication to the development and implementation of South African financial law and regulation, for her commitment to the development of a new generation of leaders, and for her remarkable achievements in the business sector.
pleasure to confer the degree of Doctor of Laws, Honoris Causa, on Nikki.
So I didn't put the phone down on the Vice-Chancellor, but I must say it was an enormous shock, so I get you, Marlene. I grew up with my late father's stories around our dining room table of a Stellenbosch of great natural beauty and deep academic rigor, of a hallowed law faculty filled with giants who wrote benchmark textbooks and regularly spent time at top global universities, of lawyers who went on to become serious business people and senior counsel, or to write groundbreaking judgments, and of the alumni who over the years went on to challenge the established South African political landscape of their times, notwithstanding the university's reputation for producing so many of South Africa's political class. So to be honoured today, to be the sixth woman only in a list of fewer than 30 people to be recognized in this manner over 100 years, to be listed in the company of Professor Andreas van Wyk, to whom I owe an easy familiarity with corporate law, of Helen Suzman, of Judges Brandt, Cameron, Chaskelson, Lange, and O'Regan, of Professor Madansela, to be able to accept this in front of my husband and my mother, who have played such important roles in enabling me to have done what I have done, and my two sons who sacrificed so much as my career progressed, is really deeply, deeply humbling, and I want to thank the university for that. When the time came for me to choose where to learn my professional craft, I really never looked beyond the Hoofgebou. It was 5 of the most stimulating years of my life, overlapping as it did with the dying days of apartheid, with the first elections fought seriously by independents, including in Stellenbosch and in the Helderberg, and with friends and professors venturing beyond our borders to meet the then still banned ANC. Stellenbosch politics may have been relatively tame on the surface, and certainly relative to other universities, but the seismic rumbles were working their way through to those with the levers of power. And at Stellenbosch, as we all know, we learnt black letter law. But we learnt our law knowing that the country was in flux, being taught, I have to say, initially quite tentatively, and in the final 2 years very stridently, that we would be called on to use long-established legal principles in new ways. Over the years, our professors who joined the faculty from other universities pushed even harder on those themes. It's actually hard to conceive now that concepts of human rights or constitutional law really never featured in as substantial parts of our curriculum. Instead, we looked at how administrative law and labor law were good starting places for concepts of natural justice and equity. Criminal procedure became a place for students to understand how equality before the law was a concept not felt in practice by many, many South Africans. And I think we may not have credited some of our lecturers in the late 80s for being as brave and as enabling as they turned out to actually be. And although we certainly knew our law, we left Stellenbosch knowing that the world we would enter was changing, that nothing would be left unchallenged, and that we could be part of making that change happen. And I'm deeply grateful for the strength of that message. And my life post-Stellenbosch has been of charting unknown waters, using the base of learning and experience I had to challenge and change what I saw. Sometimes that was building whole new businesses, and sometimes just new business models. Sometimes, as you've heard, it was all about technology, and at other times, all about people. Oftentimes, it was about bringing colleagues and other stakeholders to confront the urgency of building a shared future. Nothing would have been possible without the strong teams of people who worked with and who challenged me over the years at home, at work, and amongst my friends. But in all of this, I learned that diversity is a competitive advantage. It's not something to note on a scorecard or to report on at a board meeting. If we crowd in different perspectives, we dramatically increase our ability to solve the most complex problems, and with a creativity that like-mindedness simply precludes. I learned that there is no lasting future in a world where privilege is not shared and where the economically disenfranchised are excluded. And there is so much more for us to do, not only in this country, but around the world. I learned that there is a deep humanity in many people and that authentic leadership can help people move past their fear of the unknown personal impact and unlock futures where the greater good can thrive. And I learned that change may feel so small as it happens, but that looking back, the arc of history can bend very far from its original course. There is no logic in waiting for tomorrow if you can start that change today. And finally, I learned that there are moments of truth for all of us. In a country as unequal as ours, leaders can and must make an enormous difference if they determine to lead in a more socially conscious and more inclusive manner. But so too for each of us as individuals. We can, and indeed we should, own the agency to stand for the changes we want to see, where we work, where we play, how we live our lives. And so as I end, I want to recognize how very far this university has come from the days when I had the privilege of walking its halls. I salute you, Chancellor, and you, Vice-Chancellor, and your deans and their teams for charting a course that has this university consciously playing its part in the creation of a country that is there for all its people. I thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Dr. for those instructions and also for great appreciation. And now this is the exciting moment. This is the moment that warrants university authority on the moment where we recognize the hard work that you and those who love you and those who have instructed you have gone through to bring you here. And we particularly recognize the fact that you completed your studies, your research, your writing up during these last 2 years, which were really tough. No, they weren't. A little bit. Yeah. Tears of passion, offer, you've made it here. And I'm very, very proud of you. Couldn't have made it here without your supervisors. Would you like to have a look at them if I ask them to stand up? Please stand up, supervisors. Yeah. I'm going to ask the various deans of education, faculty of law and then theology to introduce you. We're very sorry that because of the constraints of the COVID limitations, you cannot do what traditionally was done, which was a summary of your contribution to learning. But you have the moment. Remember, it's being broadcast on the web. Remember that there will be a recording of this, so take a moment when you pass through when the meeting calls it through. Thank you.
Mr. Chancellor, I request you to acknowledge the following candidates who completed and graduated in March 2021 with a doctoral qualification. These candidates will cross the stage for ceremonial purposes only. Christopher Brian Swartz with dissertation, the curriculum advisor, the curriculum leers rol, tiden de implementari van de curriculum van de anderen en de algemene onderwijs en opleidingsplan gevallen study. The supervision provided by Professor A.E. Carr. Simtembile Kaketwan with dissertation, the implementation of the language policy for multilingual education, extending the teaching and learning in isiXhosa for communicative purposes in teacher education. Supervision provided by Professor M. Robinson. Mr. Chancellor, I request you to confer on the candidates whom I will present to you the degree Doctor of Philosophy in the Faculty of Education. Zelda Botha with dissertation Digitale Technologie en de bevordering van vaardigheid ontwikkelen voor de leerders met erge intellectueel gestremdheid. Supervision provided by Professor L.M. Meyer. Carlin Conradi with dissertation existentiële ontstichting als noodzaak voor de denkende psychotherapeut lettere als platform voor de eerste dispositie. Supervision provided by Professor R.E. Swart. Jean Lillian Farmer with dissertation Narratives of Black Women Academics in South African Higher Education and Autoethnography. Supervision provided by Professor R. Carlson. Thaddeus Diatapo Shigukumya with dissertation and interpretive analysis of Namibian education policy and its link to citizenship education. Supervision provided by Professor Y. Wahid. Miamino Alien Shiweda with dissertation, narrative writing and language biographies on English language learning, the case of Ifikomunye Ohamba campus. Supervision provided by Professor C. van der Waalt.
Mr. Chancellor, I request you to acknowledge the following candidate who completed and graduated in March 2021 with a doctoral qualification. This candidate will cross the stage for ceremonial purposes only. Erik Heppel, with dissertation Compliance with Minimum Wages, a South African Legal Perspective. And I'm proud to say that he was my candidate. Meneer die kanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in die regsgeleerdheid in die fakulteit regsgeleerdheid aan die kandidaat wat ek aan die voorstel te verleen. Pieter Gerhardus Jacobus Korenhof, with dissertation Competition Law and Abuse of Dominance by Firms who Conduct Business on the Internet, and supervision was provided by Professor Philip Sutherland.
Meneer die kanselier, ek versoek u om die graad dokter in die wysbegeerte in die fakulteit Theologie aan die kandidate wat ek aan u voorstel te verleen. Mr. Chancellor, I request you to confer on the candidates whom I'll present to you the degree Doctor of Philosophy in the Faculty of Theology. Tekeline Duguma Negevu, with a dissertation Identity Formation in the Gospel of Matthew, a socio-narrative reading, and supervision was provided by Professor M.J. Marius Nell. Mr. Vice-Chancellor, the following degree was earned as a joint degree with the Free University in Amsterdam and Stellenbosch University. Reino Louis van der Riet, with dissertation Avowing Truth, Embodying Justice, a theological analysis of truth-telling and transitional justice in South Africa, and the supervision was provided by Professor Robert Vosloo.
Meneer die kanselier, ek versoek u om aan die kandidate wie se name ook aan u voorgelê is, maar wat nie hier teenwoordig is nie, die onderskeie grade in hulle afwesigheid te verleen. Mr. Chancellor, I request you to confer the degrees on those candidates whose names have been presented to you, but who could not attend in their absence.
I confer the degrees on those candidates whose names have been presented at the ceremony, but who have been unable to attend in absentia. Ek ken nie die grade toe aan die kandidaat wie se naam aan my voorgelê is, of wat nie kan bywoon in absentia.
Mr. Vice-Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, an outstanding feature of institutions that focus on excellent performance is that excellent achievers receive acknowledgements on different levels and in different ways. In the context of Stellenbosch, this recognition includes the Chancellor's Awards, which focus on sustained excellence in research and/or learning and teaching and/or community interaction and/or administration. In the Faculty of Education, the Chancellor's Award for 2021 is awarded to Professor Chris Reddy. I have pleasure in presenting the following motivation in respect of the recipient. Professor Chris Reddy is an outstanding scholar and National Research Foundation rated researcher who successfully integrates his research with teaching and social impact. Throughout his 20-year career at Stellenbosch University, including a term as departmental chair, he has led groundbreaking community projects and made an immense contribution to the development of environmental education through his research and scholarship. Professor Reddy has established environmental education as a social impact process and serves on national, provincial, international committees in this field. He also played an important part as coordinator of the environmental education program of the University of Stellenbosch, which was tasked with incorporating environmental education into all programs of the Faculty of Education. This also included the development of specialized MEd in environmental education degree. In addition, he was instrumental in getting environmental education integrated with the formal school curriculum in 1997. Mr. Vice Chancellor, I request that you present the Chancellor's Award for Excellence to Professor Chris Reddy.
Was that fun? Yes. I want the lawyers particularly to say it. The lawyers are the last to say it. I'm very pleased. It was delightful. And your ceremony was advanced by the Chancellor, Professor Reddy, and to the four enormously distinguished people, brave and people that we have honored this afternoon. But on the other hand, your hard work provided the occasion for them to get this honor from the university. So my deepest congratulations to you for reaching the highest award of any university can offer. And I want to take a moment before we finish for you to acknowledge your loved ones and your family and your friends. Don't you want to look up at the streaming device and look at your family present? You get up, wave. I hope that you feel proud of receiving your doctorate from a university as eminent as Stellenbosch, a university that we have heard praised generously as a university that is changing in beneficial and inclusive ways. I feel very proud to be a graduate of Stellenbosch myself. And remember that the connectivity that this qualification affords on you is an important element. MartiesConnect.com enables you to make contact with any Stellenbosch alumnus anywhere in the world and will be an important part of your future direction in your profession. If you also wanted to be part of the Stellenbosch alumnus group, you are proud of the alumni. They elect representatives onto the council. The convocation has an election as well. I want you to be participants in that in future. And then remember that we all have an added responsibility in this time of difficulty in our country. We have had an upheaval this year, we had massive job losses, the economy is in crisis. You now are in a position of particular privilege and note to be able to make a contribution in all those ways. So at the end of a joyful celebration of distinction, of achievement, and of your accomplishment, and also your potential, let him draw this to a close, laat ek hierdie met daardie woorde van gelukwens aan u, van trots aan ons aan, en ook van verantwoordelikheid wat nou op u geplaas word. Maar ek hiermee sê dat praktiese magte in my gesetel, dit is statiek, verklaar ek hiermee dat die congregatie beide is. I call this to end by declaring that this congregation of the university is now concluded. I would ask you please to stand and to remain standing when you leave. Thank you so much. Please clap.